On lesson 5.3, write linear equations and point slope. Here's what we're going to preference this with. We do not typically use point slope form, but we're going to use today. We don't use it as often. Okay? So just know that. The reason this is good to know is once we have it, we can go and write into point intersect form, or point slope form, the one that we've been doing, y equals mx plus b. But what this is really helpful for, it's really helpful for us when we are trying to solve story problems. It kind of helps us make sense of how to write. So just know that part. This very beginning, the warm-up, I think we were going to have a little bit of trouble, so I'm going to go a little quick through it, especially because of our time. Our warm-up took, our grading took longer. But it says, write an equation of the line. So, how could we write an equation for the line? When all I have is, it says it passes through 3, 4, and our slope is negative 3. Alex?
Mx plus b, you can substitute the 3 for the x and the 4 for the y, so it would be y, or 4 equals negative 3 times plus b.
Good. So we're using our slope form, y equals mx plus b, and we're inputting numbers that we know. We know our slope is negative 3, y right here is 4, so we said y is 4. Slope was negative 3. And so just gonna x was a 3, but then we do not know what b is, so we need to solve for that. So we just simplify negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. And I'm going to add 9 to each side. 13 equals b. Okay. Now what do we do, Alex?
You take y equals negative 3x plus 13.
Good. We're going to go back and we're going to leave our y and our x alone. We're going to leave them as variables because it's going to work for any coordinates. So we're now going to say y equals, m is our slope, which we already identified as negative 3x plus 13. We just found our b to be 13. Okay. So it's a lot of steps and it's going back and forth. But this is something that we should be able to do by now that we weren't able to do earlier in this chapter. I'm going to go ahead and skip number 2, but if you want to try it and check with me later on it, I'd love for you to do that. But for time-wise, we're going to go forward, and we're going to skip this first problem too. So today's learning goal, I can write an equation in point slope form. When we scroll down, we see point slope form. I don't think this is on your OneNote. I added this picture in last night because I felt like for me, that picture I added in did a lot more for me. Point slope form of an equation of the non-vertical line through a given point x1, y1 with the slope of m is, and this is the equation. So I went and found this picture and I thought this helped more. This is what point slope looks like. Y minus y1 equals m, and then in parentheses, x minus x1. Well, we're definitely going to be using coordinates from the first x and the first y. And notice where they are at. Okay? So you can already recognize the difference between the two. They both have slope. They both have x. It looks like this part is the same. But you see the little difference. For point slope, we're going to have parentheses with another point and the y in the beginning. And once we get working on this, it's not that difficult. So on 5.3, it's saying steps to graph. So if you flip up in your little foldable that we gave you, you should be, this is why we keep this so when we can study for this test, we already did slope-intercept form. That's the one we're most comfortable with. But if you now flip it open to the one that says point-slope form, steps to graph, you should be writing these down. To graph, first thing, graph the point x1, xy. Well, I'm going to go back to that earlier little thing that we had. And it told me what my points are. So looking at this point slope, I know that my x1 is this, and my y1 is that. So I'm going to go ahead and write my coordinates. But there is a trick to this. And this is the part that is going to confuse some people. And I want to make sure I do it right. Okay. Before you write the points, this is something that I have to constantly remind myself of. We see that the x, we would think it's positive 1, right? Because it says positive 1 there. When we write down our coordinates, it's going to the opposite of the sign that it shows. Because if you look back at this point slope form, how it's written, it's always a minus, always a minus. So when we write it here, we're going to write the opposite. So my x-coordinate, there's a 1, but it says positive 1. So my x-coordinate is going to actually be negative 1. When I go to look at my y, it says minus a 3. So it's going to be a positive 3. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to find negative 1. So I go over 1 and I'm going to go up 3. 1, 2, 3. That's my first point that I can graph. Our second step to graph is use the slope to find more points. Well, our slope is negative 2. Remember, if it's negative 2, as a fraction, that's 2 over 1. So rise over run. So I'm going to go 1, 2, and then 1. My point's going to be that. I should use that so you can see that point again. And then I can do the same thing over and over. 1, 2, 1. And now, I'm going to use the color. I can draw my line. That's going to be one of the most tricky parts is we have to remember the equation, how it goes, and then that our coordinates are the opposite sides. There is one thing I was hesitant to show you, but since you guys always have to show your work, I'm going to let you do this because I think this will help some people. If you ever go to Desmos, does anyone use that? It's a graphing thing online. So if I go to start graphing, we are going to mess with this later, you can put in the equation and it'll automatically graph at 40. Now the reason I'm showing this to you and I like it is because this is how we can check. So I want to make sure I'm going to write this down so I don't forget it. Actually, you guys have it in front of you so you can just tell it to me. But what was our initial equation, the very beginning? I'm going to have one, but where's yours? Oh, this will be yours. We had y minus 3 equals negative 2 parentheses x plus 1 parentheses. And it graphs it for us. So we should be able to find out, remember our coordinates, they're here 2 and 4. So halfway is 3, and we would see our 3, negative 1 would be over here, because they're halfway. There's our graph. The reason I'm showing you this is because sometimes to learn this stuff better, you think you're doing it right, but if you see the answer, you can work towards the answer and then try and apply it again. So, if you need to look at this again and try some of your other equations, it's not going to help you guys. So I'm not showing this so you can just go, oh, now my homework's easy. I'm just going to go put in and copy whatever's there. But if you need to check yourself, make sure you're doing it right, put that in.
What's it called?
Desmos, D-E-S-M-O-S. Okay, recognizing point slope form. This is also on your little foldable. So for the first 2 dots, x and y are opposite sides of the equal sign. Okay, kind of like our other one. Second part, either x is in parentheses or y is not by itself, or both of them are happening. Devlin?
My one.
Try reopen it and refresh
No,
that.
I did multiple times. Like everything on it is gone. I don't see it.
I'll look at it with you in a little bit. Can you follow along with notes? Okay, the other part it says is part of the equation. This is the important part. This is what I was just telling you about. M, of course, it's a slope line. Nothing changed. But this part I think is so important. X1 and XY is a point on the line. Opposite sides in the equation and a point. Now, forget that part. So it's the opposite side. And we do a couple examples. It's not as difficult. It starts clicking pretty quick. Biggest thing is you might need to use your notes. Memorize this point slope form. So when you read out, you can always look back at it. But it's fairly easy. Y minus y1 equals m in parentheses x minus x1. Okay, if you're not all the way caught up, that's okay. It's recorded. You can watch today's lesson in a second. So, example 1. Write an equation in point slope form. Write an equation in point slope form of the line that passes through the points 4, negative 3, and has a slope of 2. I don't think this part's on yours. Do you guys see this on yours? Okay. I added this last night too, because I thought it would be helpful. So, I just put down the equation, but you can just always go ahead and write it. When you go to start something, start at the fresh. So, it's y minus y1 equals m the slope x minus x1. Okay, so now we're going to input things we know. I know my first y1 is negative 3. So if I was to write this again, I'd say y minus negative 3, which that's going to end up changing this to y plus 3, equals, do we know our slope? Our slope is 2. So I'm going to go 2. And we know our first x stays as x. And then it says x1. We know x1 is 4. So we put minus 4. Look at our equation. If I was to, like they will, right here, they'll combine that. So they'll just say y plus 3. Now pay attention to how this looks according to our equation. 3 is a positive. On our point, it's actually a negative, opposite sides. Here, my x is a negative 4. It's really a positive 4. This is your answer. This is the equation in point slope form. Once you remember to switch the signs to opposite, it's actually not that difficult. It was pretty simple to do that. Now to graph. I went ahead and put a grid on mine as well. I added some things in mine last night. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. I'm just going to make my t-chart. I decided to put a grid because I thought it'd be easier for you to see. And I'm going to say every point is just 1. So like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. And so on. Okay, so we have to graph this equation. What do we know? Do we know our coordinates yet? To graph this, I have to have coordinates. Do we have coordinates listed on this point slope form? We do. What's my x coordinate? What? It's right here. Remember, keep going back to that original formula. Y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. Where what we're going to look for is coordinate, coordinate, slope. That's what's going to be important to. And remember, the signs are opposite. So if I do this, my x coordinate listed, the x1 listed that we highlighted, it says it's negative 3. So what is my x coordinate actually going to be? Positive 3. What does it say? What's it say right now? My y1 is. It says it is positive 2. So we're going to write it as. So now I can graph this point. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Okay. Now that we have one point on the line, if we know the slope. Oops. Good catch. I'll just make sure you guys are paying attention. It's one of those teacher tricks. Just see if you guys are listening. Not that I messed up. So, and then we look for our slope. What is our slope on this one? 2 over 3. That's where our slope is located. So I'm going to go up 2, remember rise over run. 1, 2, and over 3. 1, 2, 3. And I can keep doing that if I want. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And then I graph my line, which was a horrible line drawing. Now, do we use point slope a lot in real life or for a lot of what we do? No, we really don't. But it is in hand. It does come in handy for solving some of these problems. Last, I'm going to look at this one. I'll record the other one because we're going to run out of time. I have one major thing we have to talk about. So, once again, I'm just going to copy my slope, my point slope form. This is what you should be doing on tests or anything you do this in real life. Always write down so you have some reference guide. Plus, the more you write this, the more you remember it. It becomes pretty easy. Okay, I'm going to look. Do I know anything on this graph? Maddie, what's one thing I do know?
No, a parallel set of points for X and Y.
Yeah. I know of points for X and Y. I don't know if you just highlighted. I'm going to actually, I highlighted this one right here because I'm going to use this point. And that's my first one. We read left to right. So my first point on here is negative 1, 3. This is my X, remember? That is Y. So when I write this equation out, we're going to go with Y. And then it's minus my Y1. My Y1 is positive 3. So we want to leave it as minus 3. Opposite sides. Equals. Ooh, do we know our slope yet?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you look at the graph, it's 1. Just 1 over 1, but you can go 1 down.
Good. If we look at our graph, we have two different ways we can do it. I can go, okay, I'm looking for, before I do that, I should explain. I'm going to look for a point where it crosses. Like, crosses well there, crosses well there. I do see it cross well here. So I can just go, well, we went down 1, over 1. So we went negative 1 and positive 1. Remember, rise over run. To go down, it was negative. To go to the right was positive 1. So our slope is negative 1. And then we look at our x coordinates. X. In this one, our x is a negative 1. So we did a negative 1. We have to write it as the opposite. So we're saying it is plus 1. I don't get why I won't write it there.
Your last is like
Huh? And so that is our equation. Okay? Okay, I'm going to stop there because our bell is about to ring, and there's two things we need to talk about. One,